Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar, Digitally Transforming First Line Support. I'm your host, Scarlett Bay, Senior Research Analyst at SDI. So in the new normal, digital transformation is a must for all organisations, but it comes with increasing pressure on service desk managers to balance the budget, upskill the team and improve efficiencies. So today I am joined by Neville Ward, Jeremy Brown, Dara Allen from Micro Focus, and they'll be talking about AI and machine learning and how it can drive the automation of tasks, processes, workflows, and change deployments from across the service desk. If you have any questions, please post them in the questions section of the GoTo panel and we'll get to them at the end. You should also be able to see a handout available in the panel as well, and I'm sure the guys will talk more about that in due course. So I will now hand over to our speakers for today. How are you all?
Good, thank you.
Good, thanks.
Fantastic.
Right, I'm just going to share my screen and we'll get going. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so good morning everyone, and thank you for the introduction, Scarlett. So my name's Neville Ward. I'm an ITSM solution specialist working for Micro Focus, and as Scarlett said, I'm joined on this call today by Dara Allen, RPA solution specialist, and Jeremy Brown, who's one of our account strategists. So we've got quite a bit of material to go through today. So rather than hold on, let's just crack on. So what are we going to talk about today? So this is the agenda. So what we want to do is really start thinking about this whole thing of digital transformation. How does that impact and affect what we're doing in ITSM and ESM as well today? And think about the challenges that we're facing, what it means for us, and also looking at what the industry is saying. Some of the concepts we're going to talk about aren't new, they've been around for a long time, but just to recap on them and get our perspective on that. We're also going to think about what, from our experience, our customers at Micro Focus are trying to address. As I say, digital transformation, big topic. We want to really focus in on some of those particular areas that come up a lot. We want to bring this to life as well. We're not going to do any product demonstrations today or anything like that. We want to bring it to life and really show you a couple of scenarios of where actually looking at digital transformation, looking at machine learning, looking at automation, how it can affect what you're doing today. And finally, we're going to really summarize what we've been talking about. And as we going through, we're going to be quoting some reports, and we're going to highlight the supporting materials that we got for you, which you're able to download links to from the handout session. So that's the agenda that we're going to go through today. And really just want to start off with talking about back office digital transformation. What are the type of challenges that organizations are kind of facing? There's a lot of digital transformation going on. It's a trend. Maybe it's talked about too much, but it can be, very innovative and it can be disruptive. So as service desk people, we're going to have to cope with that change. Obviously, a lot more digital type technologies are coming in. We have a generation that we are supporting now that are more digital savvy and really, expect to interact with us in a digital way. Everything's a service, has been for a long time, but the concept of services is more so than it's ever been. And we have to be conscious that during all this disruption, different models, complexity, we still have to maintain the governance and the compliance that we have in place today. So what can this actually lead to for us? What's the kind of impact we can start feeling on the service desk? Well, some of our resources might start to be overstretched. We're trying to support more, as I say, more business models, more services, more complexity. that would lead to potentially less time for us to get involved in some of the strategic projects that we want to do. And worryingly, that could also lead to a drop in service and the service quality, and being able to really understand what's going on. So, a bit of context around what digital transformation can mean, and the challenges it can mean for us on the surface. But let's think about this a bit more on the impact of what it means to ITSM and ESM.
So, Nev, when we putting these slides together, we sort of were coming up with some of the realities that our customers, our clients are facing. And we've been in this industry for quite a while. I know you've been in and around helping people either working in the service management arena or helping people deliver service management projects. So we've seen the evolution of some of these things you've been talking about here. So I think one of the things, if we just go through a couple of these, because people can read all of these themselves, if we say maybe take the top one there, I think we've been offering service portals for quite some time. But what's the impact that we're seeing with where we are today on those service portals?
So there's two sides to this for me. So you're right, service portals have been around for a long time, and you could argue that's not really linked to digital transformation at all. But actually, people are expecting to interact with the portals in more of a, let's say, a digital way. Portals historically have been great for providing information, but sometimes we kind of put too much information on them, which makes it hard for people to actually find what they really need. The experience, I often talk about this in terms of portals. How often do we refresh our portals? Is it something that we put in when we first put in the service desk, and all we've been doing is adding more data to it? Or are we actually thinking about how our users interact with that? What are they expecting today? They're expecting more of the digital experience, the mobile phone, clicking on that, being able to do Google type searches. So that's what I think people are looking for. More digital services, more complexity means people's expectations are higher around that portal and the experience they should be receiving.
And I guess there's a massive overhead associated with the more services, the more information that's coming in, and you want to publish through these. If you have traditional ways of working, like some of the tools we used to sell in the old days, it just makes it more difficult to sit on top of that. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, if we're creating more services, I've seen portals maybe a few years ago where, everything is kind of categorized and you have to go through a tree structure to find what you're looking for. I think those days are gone. People are used to going in, even talking to their own personal assistants and asking for the information they need and having that presented to them in a very timely way.
So just if I pick up maybe just one other area, the next one down, if I say high incident request volumes, I guess, as you were mentioning about the impact of digital transformation, as people are accelerating and doing lots more services, delivering new applications, building out, linking in clouds, all of this type of stuff, what's happening is that there's an explosion in management information, and also events, incidents, requests. So what is the sort of the consequence for the management team? What is this? What are they facing here?
Yeah, so high incident request volumes is, again, not new. It's a thing that we faced for a long time. Maybe that's becoming slightly worse. More services going in, more things to learn. Maybe that's impacting us. We're making, if we're improving our digital experience, people can then request more. So we're seeing volumes go up. Not new. What I think we need to do now is to be cleverer with the information that we've got. Yes, I can see a report of all the outstanding incidents, but where should I really be focusing my time? What are the areas that are going to give me the best return? What areas can I start to think about automating? Can I start to think about automating the recovery or the remediation of some incidents? Can I think about automating requests in terms of the overall delivery? And that's what we really want to get in and talk about today is, one side is understanding the full picture, lots of information out there, but again, we could be overloaded with the information, but how we use that information and what we can do with that information, like improving the way that we automate things. And that gives a start into where we need to focus our time.
So this is like a micro focus slide. Have we got any information that maybe validates what people are actually thinking to address these type of topic areas?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about a couple of things. It's interesting when we were putting this webinar together, and one of the things that we want to talk about, and we will be talking about today, what is automation, and actually digital transformation. So I kind of look back to 2018. And one of the the good surveys that come out of the ITSM tools team, and interestingly, back in 2018, the top topic was automation, followed by AI. Again, we're going to talk about AI today and how those two things work together. And in third place was actually digital transformation. So I kind of thought that was kind of interesting, and I wasn't really surprised by that. But if I look forward to the 2020, same thing, hottest trends in ITSM from the ITSM tool team. Interestingly, the top three are the same again. So digital transformational, digital workflows, how do we improve what we're doing with the service desk? How do we bring in not just automation to maybe fulfill particular requests, but how can we digitize the workflows that we work with today? So these are things that we've been talking about. AI and machine learning. Well, AI is actually moved up to number 2, and automation is third. So if you then look at the ones underneath that, there's quite a drop off to the to the next things, which is in this case more about people and culture. So clearly they're the 3 really important topics around ITSM and ESM at the moment. And what we want to really explore is how those actual things, yes, you can do them independently of each other, but how those things actually work together to really give you that overall digitalization. So this is very much a perspective from ITSM. I'm going to hand over now to Dara to think of it, to look at some statistics from an automation perspective.
Yep, thank you, Neville. So in addition to the surveys held by ITSM, we at Micro Focus sponsored Dimensional Research to carry out a global RPA survey. We asked business and technology professionals around the globe about their experience adopting and scaling RPA. Although RPA is still in the early stages, we found that 69% of companies within the last 2 years have begun their RPA journey. And of this 69%, 89% of these projects have been extremely or mostly successful. If we're to break it down, 51% of these companies saved 30+ hours in a working week, while 17% saved over 80 hours every week. So yeah, just the next slide there, Neville. RPA. RPA is a company-specific undertaking, which is driven by business-specific needs. When asked where RPA is deployed, we found that companies are automating processes ranging from sales to HR to finance to to compliance and auditing. And then as RPA adoption continues to grow, companies plan to continue automating more business functions with specific focus on compliance, auditing, and finance. The tools most frequently used, just onto the next slide there now, sorry. The tools most frequently used with RPA are IT process automation tools. So what does this tell us? Although RPA can be a standalone solution, it needs to work well with other tools and functions as part of a larger digital transformation strategy to see to truly see the benefits. Companies expected efficiency gains and their expectations are being met. Bots in production are delivering across the board, looking at the faster processes, fewer errors, reduced costs, and higher employee productivity, to name but a few benefits. So I'm going to hand this back over to Nev to bring this all together for the audience.
Yeah, so just touching on this slide. So, for the audience, RPA, robotic process automation, we'll talk more about it as we go through, but just taking that automation story to the next stage. So thinking about using robots to perform that, as well as API type automation that's been around for a long time. So I think this slide is really interesting, and you look at IT process automation, as Dara just said, big data, but we can clearly see enterprise service management up there, and the value, the benefits, faster processes, reduce errors, reduce costs. Those are the things that we need to really drive to really do the digital transformation. So let's start to kind of bring it together and kind of bring it back to a service management sense. We believe that there are three topics out there: IT service management, enterprise service management. I think we're all kind of familiar with that as a topic. Nothing new to anybody. AI, going back to the survey we looked at earlier, AI, the simulation of human intelligent processes, including learning, reasoning, and self-correction. And RPA, software robots that not just will interface using APIs, but can actually mimic UI-based human actions to automate everyday tasks. So we think actually, when we're looking at digitization and what we can do on the service desk, we need to look across all those three things: ITSM, how we can use AI and machine learning, and how we can use robotic process automation. So if we think about those three things, and we think about the back office transformation that we talked about earlier, we believe 1 + 1 + 1 can equal 5. So when you put those different components together, you're getting more value. So again, if we think about ITSM first, using the self-service, having a really good self-service experience, very much built for the digital natives, built with machine learning in there, so people can search what they want to find in a Google-like way, bringing in components like virtual or chatbot agents, and also using the machine learning to give us the insights that I was talking about earlier. So how do we improve? How do we automate? What's the next thing that we automate? And obviously automation as well. So thinking in terms of Runbook Automation, running workflows, task orchestration, being able to provision or create an account somewhere. Also bringing in robotic process automation. Not all the systems that we use or we have to interface with have APIs. Okay, so what can we do to address that? Well, we can use our robotic process automation to actually automate what the user is putting in, and using robots to do that. Cognitive automation, I'll kind of touch on that a bit as we go forward, and there's a Gartner term called hyper automation, which is really pushing everything to automation. So the point is, yes, we can do ITSM. You're all doing that today. Some of you might be using machine learning or AI capabilities within your solutions. Hopefully they're embedded together and work very tightly together. But when you add automation, it's using the power of all those three things together. That starts to give us more value and benefit. So let's think again about the impact. We talked about the impact and the portal. Jeremy was asking me about the portal, etc. So let's talk about that in a little bit more detail, and revisit some of those.
Okay, Nev. So when let's just sort of nip through a couple of these so we can get through. So I know we've got some scenarios that will bring it to life a bit in a few minutes. But as you said, from a service portal type perspective, the consequence of having, let's just say, old school or slightly older ones, giving you frustrated users, finding things difficult, being a bit frustrated. What are people looking for? What are when they're talking to you? What are they requiring? And what will they hope that give them?
So it's the main thing is the right information to the right people at the right time. So being able to find what they need to request, an easy way for them to report issues that they have, in an efficient and effective way. The more we can do around that, and obviously I keep on coming back to this point, but being very digitally minded, supporting the digital natives, that's going to drive a higher adoption of your self-service. By doing that, we can do other things, and we'll talk about those as we go forward. Other things in terms of analysing that information, working out if they're repeat requests or repeat incidents, etc. How can we tackle them? Can we again use automation to help us tackle those? So really, giving you the higher adoption, therefore higher productivity.
Okay, so maybe then I think you just touched upon it there, the sort of using that information and learning from it. So you call this actionable insights, right?
Yeah. So actionable insights are not just reports. Reports are important, and we all have KPIs and we all have KPI reports, and that may show us how many tickets that we responded to in a certain period, how many have we got outstanding. But is that really giving us the analytics that we need to really improve, and taking into account other information that we have available to us today? I mean, if you look at service desk solutions, they are great at capturing information, in a very structured way, titles, descriptions, categorizations, closure codes, resolution codes, all really good information. But sometimes historically we've kind of struggled to get some of that information out. Yes, we've been able to do KPIs and stuff like that, but have we really been able to get insights out of all that information? And with the adoption of things like machine learning, now we can start to unlock the power of all the other data that we have in there, and that can really give us, as it says there, better trend analysis that will lead on to the automation opportunities that we can exploit with solutions like RPA.
Okay, so just thinking about time here for a second. So I know that we've got some other things here, so maybe if we just build those up. I guess the point we're seeing in here, there's quite a lot of things around picking up certain tasks and then driving efficiency. I think we've got some scenarios coming up that maybe will bring this to life. Well, should we have a look at those in a minute?
Yeah, we'll have a look at those in a minute. Just to pick out a couple of things on here, though, you're absolutely right, Jeremy. We want to avoid, or we want to prevent, or whatever the right word is, or get rid of the time-consuming, repetitive, error-prone tasks. That will make quality a lot better, and it will free up people. So, digitizing, the workflows, using the automation to really drive some of those efficiencies. And, we're spending a lot of time in the industry on the same tasks that we've been doing for lots and lots of years. There may be good reason for that. Some may be manual. But again, with the introduction of more technology like RPA and being able to actually look at the user interface, that gives us a whole wealth of other things that we can look at that can not only just automate, but actually, maybe prevent errors happening on some of those tasks as well.
Okay, so as a software vendor, then, sorry, no, there you go. So as a software vendor, I'm assuming, we've got solutions that underpin this, right?
Yeah, so we have we have a service management and service desk solution called SMAX that's built on machine learning, AI analytics, process workflows, the ability to understand what's going on and use those capabilities natively within the solution. And of course, we do have an automation solution, RPA. I think the important thing around this for us, the 1 + 1 + 1 = 5, is it's a integrated solution. So you're not having to maybe think about what service management, service desk solution you have. Maybe that has AI and machine learning capabilities, maybe it hasn't. Maybe you have to look slightly outside for that. And you may already have an automation tool that may, well, I'm sure may work with your service management, service desk tool. The difference that we bring is it's all as one solution. So the 1 + 1 + 1 = 5 is the solution that we can bring. So you think about it from end to end, and this will certainly come out in the scenarios that we're going to talk about next.
Right.
So just to go back to those impacts, I'm not going to go through all of those, but the solutions we have within Micro Focus, we have SMAX that really addresses the service portal, the Actionable Insights, SMAX and RPA working together to give you faster time value, lower cost of ownership around the solution. So as I say, integrated together, you're not having to plumb two things together. RPA, an automation solution that you can use on its own, but you get greater value when you start to put those two things together, to look at not just the automation, but understanding the digitalization of those workflows as well, and those steps in the process that you go through. So just a real slide how those things come together and how we support those. So now we want to talk about some scenarios. And we want to bring a few scenarios to life, and really illustrate what we can do and how we can really start to let's say digitize those scenarios. So the first one we want to talk about is self-service. So something dear to Jeremy's heart, self-service. So I'll let him talk about this.
Okay, so I know we've been enabling customers for some time across all vendors to try and enable them to help themselves interact, whether it be through self-service portal, send an email in, or whatever it is. But typically, whatever the channel into it, people are still having problems, right? So let's just take this this young lady here. She's got a problem with her system, maybe the application, whether it's a web app or maybe her laptop's gone wrong, has got a problem. So what she's doing here, typically, and this is what we see all over the place, it happens to me as well occasionally internally, is that she'll either phone in, send an email, and then have a conversation, a dialogue with somebody in the help desk. So, when you're in a help desk, when you're on the service desk, you're going to have an interaction and potentially say, what do you see? And they start talking about and maybe accessing the knowledge, looking up a bit of knowledge, and then that knowledge is triaging them through an interaction with the customer, and then they're going to say things like, oh, can you try a reboot? And then if the reboot doesn't work and the blue screen still comes back, they're then going to say, can you send me a screenshot? That's if you can get a screenshot, but maybe it's an application error. They can just snapshot it or whatever and then email it them over. That person then uses that information through the triage to attempt a first time fix. But let's just pretend that they can't even fix that themselves. They then have to assign resolver. So that means then you're dragging that work order, the ticket, you're assigning that to a user. And then when that level 3 or a domain expert can get around to it, they drag themselves up and go, no sweat, I'm on it. And then they interact either with the back-end system or whatever, and then they fix it. Having fixed that then passes back, and then the ticket is closed down. And then the end user is going to say, thanks a lot, I'm really happy. So I'm not sure, but having just talked through that, there's a number of steps, and I've sped through it. I think we tend to find that kind of interaction will take quite some time. Would you say, Nev?
Yeah. And maybe this is an extreme case. We throw in the reboot, we throw look up knowledge, but typically, the service desk agent is going through a process. He's updating the system. He's looking up knowledge. He's having to assign, as you say. And with the best will in the world, you've got the process, you've got the process flow going on, and there are these steps maybe quite quick in their own right, but put together that can take a bit longer than hopefully people want and expect these days.
Okay, so can you give me a better view maybe of how we could change this experience for the end user?
Yeah, so we're going to take the same scenario. This could be the to be. So the same error message the young lady has. So what we want to do now, and it is really allow her to interact. We talked about self-service earlier. Portals. Any good portal should have a native mobile application associated with it. We want to enable the user to just pick up their mobile phone, and if it's a blue screen, as we described earlier, just take a photo of it using her phone with the mobile app. Just take a picture. We want to think about the user experience. We want to make it easy for them to engage with us, so they can get the best possible experience, and they will therefore come back for more. So first step is the user takes a picture with a mobile application. We can then use technology, and what I'm talking about is technology that we have within our solution to actually read that picture and turn that image into text. So from blue screen, we can turn that into text. Again, if we think about the previous as is, where we've got people talking to other people, are they really going to read out accurately the full error message? Maybe, maybe not. So if we can kind of digitalize that and automate that and get the right information in, even better. So we're using OCR technology, part of our machine learning capabilities, to turn that into text. We can then obviously open a ticket within our tool, very simple. But we can then also use our machine learning to actually identify what we call an offering, so a template, the resolution. What do we need to actually resolve that particular issue? So the system has learned when it sees that error message and sees those key points on the error message, it's looked for those, it's identified trends, and we've trained it to say, when you see these error messages in these terms, automatically apply what we call a task plan, but think about it from a remediation. So from the ticket, the machine learning kicks in and says, oh, I've seen lots of these before, I know what to do with it. So no human interaction at this point at all. I'm going to assign the following task plan to that, and that task plan itself may be to assign the activity to a robot, using RPA, or just kicking off an automation task. From that, the robot can actually close the ticket down as well and send the survey. So what does that really mean for the user? Again, she's a happy user, but starting to look at that overall scenario and starting to break down those steps and starting to digitalize that, we're really thinking about taking the time down from minutes to seconds. From the point the image is captured, it's submitted, we open the ticket, the machine learning kicks in, we apply the most appropriate offering, which has gone through all the testing. The robot fixes it and closes the ticket. So literally, we're talking seconds for that scenario to happen. So for us, this is really about digitizing that experience.
So that's really interesting, Nev. So based on this, I mean, I'm guessing in the complex world we live today, with lots of things happening, the service debt, or the teams on the service management tools have got potentially a wealth of information that could automate. So this is one scenario. There are many. So how would you maybe identify which of these flows or activities to automate first?
I'm really pleased you asked that, Jeremy. I'm going to talk about something I've mentioned, we've mentioned a couple of times already this morning, which is Actionable Insights. So, that scenario is maybe a classic scenario, but how do we identify other ones that we need to do? How do we work out, what other requests that are coming in that we need to fix? So this is where we start talking about actionable insights. So, as a service desk manager, they want to know everything. What's going on? What do I need to focus on? Now, what are the right things I need to do? I need to drive improvements. I need to, my SLAs need to go up. I need to be doing more. I want to improve. But at the same time, I really can't, afford to disrupt everyone to make lots of changes. So, so that's some of the challenges that we think the service desk managers are kind of facing today. And as we said earlier, it isn't necessarily due to a lack of information. KPIs, charts, reports, customer satisfaction surveys, SLAs. You might have contracts with vendors. All of that information is potentially available, but how do you start to kind of make sense? If I want to know what's going on, where do I need to look? Do I need to look in multiple sources? Is it really, giving me what we call the insights to see where I need to focus? So in a lot of scenarios, we don't think that actually happens. So our approach is kind of different. It's looking at that data, and as I said earlier, there's actually a wealth of data within our service management solution, but actually making sense of it using machine learning. So we are less bothered about the categorization of a record, and more bothered about what that record says. That's going to give us a better sense, and we can then take that information and we can start interpreting that. And this is all done automatically, again using the machine learning. We can look at all those records within the system. If we're allowing our users to do self-help, knowledge sourcing, we can look at questions they're asking themselves. What's that telling us? That's telling us they may have a lot of problems. They don't understand what they need to do with teams, etc. So it's giving us those insights that maybe we need to do some education, maybe we need to create some request offerings, maybe we need to create some knowledge offerings. Where are all our requests coming from? Are we getting the same requests time and time again? Which probably we are, but the difference between this and using a more traditional KPI report is we're not reliant on the categorization of that record to say I'm trying to think of it's deployed something, it's fixed this particular blue screen. We're looking at the text within that record to identify the trends. So we think that's a lot better and accurate way of discovering that information. And we can do the same for incidents as well. So, one of the things we talked about earlier was, incidents, how many incidents are we having? We want to reduce them. Where do we need to focus? Often the realm of proactive problem management to look at that. But if we can, use our machine learning to actually tell us we're getting a lot of those incidents, two things. One, we might want to kick off our problem management to get to the root cause. Yeah, we should be absolutely doing that. But some of those incidents we may not be able to avoid. So how do we start automating those? How do we start remediating those and working on the ones that's maybe taking us more time to do, to allow us to focus on other things? And of course, we want to get insights into what people are looking at within the portal, what they're searching for, what sort of things are they caring about, what they're finding. Again, thinking about how we kind of improve the end user experience, making sure the information is there, they can find it in a really quick way. So this is what our solution is to the actionable insights. So the sort of outcomes that we want to drive from that is, the service desk manager can see these things. So, what the customer's asking each other, what problems are they facing, what can we automate, what feedback are our customers actually giving around that.
So can we, I was going to say, so Nev, because we then maybe see the kind of things that they could automate?
Yeah, so we're now gonna, so that was a couple of, scenarios that we kind of went through, linking back to some of the impact that we talked about earlier. But one of the main topics that people always talk about when we think about automation is the request to fulfill. So someone is requesting something. So how do we address that? So let's look at this scenario. So again, this may be a scenario that we have today, that we have a portal, we have our user going into the portal to request something. Now that could be a new user account, it may be any number of things, and often when that gets kicked off, we have our service desk process, we have our let's call it the service desk process governance, where that record would go through a number of steps, as illustrated there. A number of steps, it may have to go through approval, and ultimately it would get closed. And we know today that some of those steps could be very manual, could be automated. We know that we could start to automate some of those activities, and we could automate some of those activities within our service management or service desk solution itself.
So the actionable insights you touched upon a few minutes ago would identify not just end-to-end processes, but individual steps within a process, tasks, work orders, whatever, that are opportunity for automation. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. And as we got here, there are maybe a bit of automation already into that process. So maybe that's what a lot of organizations have today, the reality of what we have today. Where we think we can start to get to, and it's actually, you're right, Jeremy, it's actual insights that help us on that journey to get there, is to actually look at the steps. Now, that process governance, often we need to go through those steps, right? So we're not necessarily saying rip out the process and have a one-step process, but maybe we are in the future. But looking at those steps, what we can actually do to actually automate those. And an important distinction, and Dara will talk about this more in a moment or two, and give you some real life examples again, is using process automation, RPA, using the robots to do those steps. Now, I mentioned earlier, some of those steps may be manual for a reason. We haven't got an API to be able to actually talk to the solution that we need to interact with in an automation sense. So what RPA, and again, Dara will talk about this in a bit more, really gives you the opportunity to think wider. If we got a file coming in, can we take that away from the human? Can we get the bot to read that, etc. So looking at our overall steps and identifying where we can apply the appropriate automation to those steps. Automation being RPA, or actually automating the processes better within the service desk service management tool itself. So I think yeah, and the more we do of that, the happier users that we actually get. So Dara, so bearing that in mind, walk through a couple of scenarios and kind of bring a bit of RPA to life, and what it can really do in these scenarios.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so it was all well and good talking about the service desk and RPA, but I think for everyone to fully understand how the two of them integrate, we need to apply them to a few use cases. So we have today two use cases on how the service desk and RPA work seamlessly together to automate any process that is repeatable. In both of these examples, the service desk will be taking the lead and governing these use cases. What this means is basically the ticket is raised in service desk, and the service desk will trigger the RPA robot to complete the workflow. So our first workflow we have here is, I'm sure everyone in this call has come across suspicious phishing emails. Yeah, grin off Jeremy, I'm sure he's come across a few too many in his time. Yeah, so when an employee receives a suspicious email, they can open up the service desk ticket and attach the email to it. Once the ticket is submitted, the robot itself would begin to work. It opens up the email attachment. It'll copy the suspicious link from the original email, and it will copy this link into an anti-phishing website. The robot will, or the website would then classify whether this is a phishing link, update the risk score back on SMACS, and then advise a defensive plan back to the original user. So as you can see here, there are multiple API and UI steps. The UI steps, how they would be recorded is we ourselves would actually go onto the anti-phishing website. We would fill in the data that we feel necessary in order to qualify the phishing email, and then we would basically show the robot what we did, and we would train the robot using that process. The second use case that we have is regarding.
Just before you go on to that, Dara, so I can imagine if you weren't using automation, this could be quite time consuming. So, you know, the user coming in, logging a ticket, the service desk agent picking up the ticket from the queue, that would be prioritized, reading the email, finding the URL, going to the website, typing the URL in, seeing what it says. So if we think about that from a time and efficiency, that could take a lot of time. And if we're thinking about security, you want to prioritize, you want to get rid of those as quickly as possible. Okay, so I just wanted to say that, Dara. Sorry.
Yeah, that's no problem. And then our second use case is addressing the challenge of onboarding new employees. So as a new hire signs their contract and emails it back to HR, HR are then tasked with creating profiles across multiple systems, entering data across screens, and seeking hiring manager's approval. Using both the service desk and RPA, this will allow a more streamlined process. So for it to break it down into steps the whole way along. So the HR specialist will open a service desk ticket and attach the new hire PDF form to it. This would notify the hiring manager for approval, of course. The workflow, once it is approved by the hiring manager, it would trigger the RPA workflow. The robot would jump in using OCR and parse through the PDF. It would gather all of the employees' details, and then using out-of-the-box Office 365 content, we can create a new user profile. It could then jump over into SAP using mimicking UI-based training and expertly navigate the SAP interface, creating an SAP user. And then the workflow would create a change request in the service desk system in order to order a new laptop. And once this is all done, it would then notify HR saying that the process has been fulfilled. So we're taking this process from hours down to the matter of minutes, saving time. Yeah, so that's two use cases to kind of show how RPA and service desk can work together. I think, Nev, you have a few more examples you want to touch on?
So just picking up on that. I mean, often when I talk to people and talk about requests, the one that always comes up first is customer onboarding, new starters, etc. And there's a lot of stuff we can do within the service desk today to provide the workflow, as we kind of alluded to there a bit. It needs to be signed off over there. A task needs to be raised to someone to do that, another task raised to someone to do that, and having that kind of overall workflow. What I think Dara just showed was the next stage of that, to actually say, what about actually looking at those individual manual tasks today and automating them, reading the PDF document, extracting the new employee's name, putting it into the workflow to create the automation to create Office 365 account. So, Dara went through a couple of examples. There are other examples that we can think about. We've touched on a bit of these already: self-service, ordering a laptop, order from a warehouse or order from a website, right? If you haven't got an API, you order from Currys or whatever, you can mimic that, right? So we can start to do that with robotic process automation. Update the personal information, again, reading a file, reading a document, as opposed to relying on something else. Other ones include, interaction or integration rather into other service management tools. So if you've got a vendor or supplier, you need to open a ticket there at an appropriate point. Again, RPA can do that, even with the older systems that a supplier might have. We can do that. And of course, the other example is, I talked about already, is, the ordering from an online store. You don't have to have the API in place to automate these things now. So lots of different, just some examples. I'm sure you can think of different examples yourself. So that's really the bulk of what we wanted to really cover today. So really, in summary, we want to go back to this 1 + 1 + 1 = 5. So when we think about digitalization, and obviously a lot of focus around automation in today's session, but it's not automation alone. It's how we use the service desk, the AI and the machine learning and automation to really start getting the value from digitizing your first line support. So, making the self-service engaging, being able to, as we talked about earlier, to take a photo, resolving issues and fulfilling requests fast by looking at what requests we're having, prioritizing the ones that we need to work on from an automation sense, and creating those workflows and that automation, as it says there, without pain, in a really easy way to start getting the value from actually resolving that, but using the machine learning to help us actually do that. If we're starting to do that, we're starting to obviously reduce, some of those time-consuming activities that we do. And a side effect of that is, unfortunately, as a human, I make errors. So robots just do what they're told to do, unless we're in a sci-fi fiction world where that gets very scary. But we can really start to eliminate those human errors, reduce the time-consuming work. And it's all of those three. Yes, we can get benefits from each of those in their own right, but when you start to pull it together, then you really start to drive, digital transformation within your service desk. So from a Micro Focus perspective, putting those two things together, the 1 + 1 + 1, 5 again, better employee experience, improved efficiency, faster time to value, consistent outcomes, and fewer outages. We're eliminating my human errors. So some examples of where we've, just take our word for it. Some examples where we've worked with customers, and you can see here, you can read some of these, the sort of benefits they've accrued from taking that sort of approach around that, and saving a lot of man hours there in terms of introducing that automation in. So finally, I just wanted to say thank you to my co-hosts, Jeremy and Dara. Thank you for attending. Within the handout section, you'll see a PDF document which will provide you with some of the information you can see here on the screen. If you're interested in learning more about SMAX, the service management tool, you can find some information there. You can request a demo, you can request a trial for RPA as well. And we've got some resources, ebooks, etc. If you want to learn a bit more about the solution, they're all there. Videos, links to videos. The same for RPA. If you want to look at RPA in a bit more detail, you can request a demo, order a trial, and we've also provided links out to some resources, videos. The report that we quoted today, the global RPA survey report, there's a link to that. So if you're interested in reading that in a bit more detail, you can find that, again, a link within the handout section. We are looking forward to attending the SDI 21 virtual conference in March. We will be there. We will have a virtual stand. You'll be able to talk to us. We'll be able to do live demos, talk to us about what we've talked about today or any other topic around that. And you'll also be able to hear from from the Micro Focus CTO about our approach to service management, where we're heading, what direction, and what the trends that we're seeing. And the final thing there is we have, if you're interested understanding a bit more about what Micro Focus can do, we have our own conference coming up in a few weeks' time as well. So if you're interested in learning a bit more, you can register and do that. So so that's really it from us. I guess, Scarlett, were there any questions that have come in or?
Thank you. First of all, thank you all so much. There was a lot of content there, and it was definitely has some great value there as well. We don't have very much time left for questions, but maybe just a quick one from myself. So you mentioned yourself that RPA is quite new. It's not been around very long. So obviously there's a lot of service desks that don't have a lot of time spare or budget or resources to implement certain complexity levels of RPA. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on how accessible it is for the majority of service desks.
Do you want me to
like
take?
A good host, I will hand that over to Jeremy.
So I've been working with customers. Actually, interesting you mentioned about new trends. I would just say the technologies that we've built ours on have been around for, let's just say, about 10, 15 years. So from a longevity and an investment in time, technology, there's nothing new about the foundations, but the trends of using them in the way that they're being used, you're right, that's more of a recent type of trend. Getting time to value, what we at Micro Focus do, and we see with a lot of our customers, is doing things and achieving value in very short timescales. So like Nev saying, identifying opportunities, we tend to recommend working on quick time to value things that are going to give you maximum impact, maximum value, which is why Actionable Insight is quite interesting. You should try and automate not just the most complex things that are going to take months to do, but as you rightly said, it's sort of the low-hanging fruit. It's things that are going to sort of create value quickly. And the whole premise around the technologies, they should be easy to use. So for example, whether it's from a workflow perspective, it's rather than coding, it's actually more about drag and drop. So if anybody's ever seen things like Visio, it's more about creating logical workflows, which is the same sort of concepts that we deal with in the service management world. And then when it comes to interacting with the UIs, which is where robots are really quite interesting, yes, we can talk to APIs, but we can also record, and it's very much a case of click, record a transaction, as Dara was talking about, and people can build these kind of interactions in very short amounts of time, and then add the parameters to it that you might want to do that are passed from the service desk tools. So we see people within, weeks getting value, and that's why we are quite happy to put, for example, on one of these links, the trial software, because we believe people should be able to download that and have a bit of a play, or even just come to us and see how quickly we can record actual sort of robotic interactions with technology to see time to value.
Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for
now, Scarlett, aren't we? Or we're at the
yeah, it's probably a good place to wrap up. So again, thank you very much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing your attendees at conference.
Yeah,
excellent.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
everyone. Have a good day.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, guys.